Hey, this is Rick Kasalich, injury specialist from exercisesforinjuries.com. In today's video, I wanted to go through a hip abductor pain fix. And I'll get Alex to go through the first exercise that you need to do in order to help with your hip abductor pain. Perfect. So it ends up being foam rolling out the thigh. So Alex is rolling out from, just below her hip to just above her knee, and she's rolling through that muscle in order to decrease the tension in the muscle. Now, in order to really target the abductors, what she's going to end up doing is rotating that leg outwards. There we go, good. And then she ends up targeting those abductors. So with this one, it ends up being like one exercise, but we're targeting 3 groups of muscles. So the first one ends up being the toe pointing straight down, so we're working on the main belly of the thigh. The second one was Alex rotated her thigh out, and that ended up working more inner thigh and the front of the thigh. And then lastly, she's going to rotate that thigh in, and she's going to roll out, same thing, from just below the hip to just above the knee. Perfect. And with this one, what we're working on is that front of the thigh and then also that outer part of the thigh. So what we're doing here is we're kind of loosening up that front thigh, inner and outer as well thigh, and that ends up helping when it comes to decreasing the tension in the thigh, leading to helping with hip abductor pain. Now when it comes to sets, reps, time, and intensity, you're looking at 1 set, repetitions 5, and 5 repetitions, 1 repetition is up and down, so it ends up being 10 total movements. Time, smooth controlled movement, just as Alex is doing. And then lastly, intensity, you want to feel like you're getting a massage. So it's not like the skin's just being rubbed, it's not like you're getting screaming pain, you're looking at feeling like you're getting a massage with the foam roller. That's how much weight you're putting into the foam roller. When it comes to like where to get these foam roller things, you can get these at any department store. This one ends up being about 3 feet. You can see that my kids have attacked it and chewed on it and eaten it. So you don't need a 3 foot, a 1 foot will end up working for you. I end up having a 3 foot so I can end up doing a variety of exercises on it. Now that ends up being the first exercise you're going to do. Now the next exercise you're going to end up doing is foam rolling out that outer thigh. Perfect. So now you're on your side, you got that foam roller, you're going to roll it up that outer thigh because you really want to focus in on that hip abductor. Good. And you'll notice with this one, it's a lot more sensitive than the other one before. Because if you're having hip abductor pain, there's a good chance that there's way too much tension within the muscle in the abductor. So as you can see, Alex is starting just below her hip, rolling on that outer thigh to just above the knee, and moving up and down in a smooth, controlled manner with this. So in the plank position, rolling up and down that foam roller. And when it comes to sets, reps, time, and intensity, she's going to do 1 set, 5 repetitions. Like I said, up and down ends up being 1 repetition. Time, as Alex is doing, smooth, controlled movement. And the intensity, you want to feel like you're getting a massage. So it's not like this, you're just rubbing the skin, or a screaming pain in the middle that you're doing. And with this one, you're going to go on one side, and then you do the same thing on the other side. And that would be the same, would apply to the first exercise that we did, foam rolling out the thigh 3-way. Now, so we've done the first 2 when it comes to that hip abductor pain fix. The third one ends up bringing both knees to the chest. So you're pulling both knees to the chest, going a little bit further, and what we're really working on is stretching out the glutes, stretching out the hips, working on that hip mobility. And then you're going to straighten the legs out and lay the legs flat. So we're working that hip through full range of motion when it comes to the flexion movement, and then bringing the knees again pulling the knees to the chest, really working on that range of motion and mobility, stretching out those glutes, stretching out the hamstrings. So when it comes to sets, reps, time, and intensity, sets 1, repetitions, start off with 5 repetitions. Time, smooth controlled movement, just as Alex is doing. And then when it comes to intensity, we're looking for a light stretch or light mobility movement that we're focusing in on. Now we're going to pop up from this one and move into the 4th one, and the 4th one ends up being a deep sumo squat. So you got a wide stance, shoulder width or a little bit more than shoulder width. You got the toes out, and then you're going to squat down as deep as you can. Okay, into that bottom position. And what we're working on is stretching out that hip, working on that mobility of that hip. So coming down, sinking into that hip, working on that mobility, like improving the movement in that hip joint, and stretching things out in that hip in that deep position. So as you can see, Alex, wide stance, toes out, hands are out front in order to counterbalance her. And she's squatting down and bringing that seat back and then sitting back into that hip position. Now when it comes to sets, reps, time, and intensity, sets 1, repetitions 5, intensity, smooth, controlled movement, and then trying to work on holding that bottom position for a good stop, 1 to 2 seconds. And the intensity, we're looking at getting a light stretch or light movement in that hip area. Perfect. So that ends up being the 4th thing that you need to do. Now moving on to the 5th thing, we're doing a kneeling hip flexor stretch with arms overhead. So Alex is going to take a step back, get into like a deep hip flexor stretch, and then she's going to bring the arms overhead. Perfect. Good. So you can see front leg flat, ankle, knees, hips are at 90 degrees. She's on the back, ball of the back foot to kind of help her with balance. Kneeling, she's tightened up the glutes, tightened up the abdominal area, brought the hips forward, stretching through that front of the thigh and the hip. And then to add intensity, she's bringing the arms overhead. Perfect. So with this one, when it comes to sets, reps, time, and intensity, sets 1, repetitions 2 on each side, so alternating back and forth. Time, holding for a good 20 seconds, and intensity, we're looking for a light stretch in that thigh, hip area, and bringing the arms overhead will end up helping when it comes to the intensity side of things. And yeah, we're focusing on the front of the hip, but loosening up that hip all around will end up helping when it comes to the hip abductor pain. Like when we went and did this deep sumo squat, that's really helping when it comes to the mobility and movement in the hip. And if we can improve that movement in the hip, that'll end up helping with the hip abductor pain. If we can lengthen things in the front of the thigh, that'll end up helping as well with that hip abductor pain. And then the last thing, the 6th thing that we're going to end up doing is standing back arches. So hands are kind of like in the pelvis area. You're going to bring the hips forward. You're going to arch back, coming to a stop, and then back to the starting position. Good. So you're going to keep your hands here. You're going to bring the head back, mid-back back, arch through that mid-back area, and then come back to the start. So smooth, controlled movement. And this one, what we're working on is improving the mobility in the back, but also by bringing those hips forward, we're working on the mobility in the hip. We're working on hip extension, so improving that joint when it comes to bringing that hip back and stretching out that hip. And lastly, we're also working on the mobility in that low back area. So a lot of times what ends up happening is there's poor movement in that low back, so what ends up happening is the hip ends up working harder and gets overworked, and then it ends up breaking down and leading to hip pain and hip abductor pain. So we're working with that standing back arch to improve that mobility in the back, which will end up decreasing the stress on that hip and the need for that hip and help when it comes to hip pain and hip abductor pain. So there you go. Give those 6 things a go in order to help fix your hip abductor pain. Now, if you want some of my other best tips when it comes to dealing with hip pain, then I recommend you click right here. I have a brand new free report called 5 Tricks That Fight Hip Pain and Tightness. Just click right here, let me know where to send that report, and I'll send you that report right away. Now, if you're watching this on a mobile device, tablet, or smartphone, head down below in the description and click the first link, which will end up being exercisesforinjuries.com/hips. Let me know where to send that report, and I'll send you that report right away. Now, if you got benefit from this video, then make sure to like this video. If you have a question or comment for me, leave it down below in the comment section. And then lastly, hit subscribe in order to get future pain relieving videos.